All right, welcome back to Firewall. I'm your host, Bradley Tusk. It's a Tuesday episode, so with us is our friend and producer, Hugo Lindgren. Hugo, how are you?
I'm feeling super caffeinated. Bradley has started going to this, we mentioned it last week, this fantastic new coffee place down the street and bring coffee for everybody, but...
It's literally, because I work out now at the Equinox on the corner. And
you go to this Equinox?
When I'm coming here.
Okay.
So I now
you have a locker
lockers
there?
I have lockers at 3 different Equinoxes.
Wow. Do you think that leads the city in Equinox lockers? Or some people have more than 3.
I bet some people even have more than 3. So it is literally on the way, and yeah, I really like it. And my view is like, if I don't want a coffee, I don't get coffee for everyone else. Right. But if I'm getting one for myself, I get one for everyone else.
It's very cute to see Bradley coming down the street and he's got his whole coffee tray for everybody. It's like, it's a nice boss thing, like coffee for everybody.
Right.
I appreciate it.
Right. Or like that email I sent out Saturday, kind of to the team of like, hey, look at all the shit we're getting done.
We should mention
very excited to write that.
We did 2 big events at the store last week. We did a cool like sort of podcast book event, and then we did one which is going to be in a future Thursday episode of Firewall, and then we did an amazing thing with Russ and Daughters at the store. Jenna Berry, who's the new person who's sort of running programming for the store, has gotten off to like a roaring start.
I mean, so Jenna's charge, and I think so far so good, is I would like this place to be some version of a downtown 92nd Street Y.
Right.
Different, obviously, but my hope is that that's what, look, this is never and was never going to be a good business, but the idea is, can we create a cultural landmark?
Yeah.
And I think these kind of events
Well,
help
those 2 events last week, I think, were really like sort of templates for what's to come. And they were particularly on Saturday, the crowd in here, the excitement,
felt great.
Was really awesome.
Felt great.
So we have a lot to talk about. We're going to do 3 main things. We're going to do something based on the new Kathryn Bigelow movie. What's the Kathryn Bigelow movie called? I don't know why I can't.
I assumed you would know because you've worked with her on movies before.
I have, but I'm not working with her anymore. So,
but you like her, yes?
She's a legend.
Yeah. No. It's so the way this all came about was I was having lunch with someone who does kind of a marketing version of what I do now in venture, which is he just takes equity for his work but he does do some other stuff, and he mentioned that he was doing the marketing for this movie and started telling me about it, and that's what kind of led to this little game that we're going to do.
It's called A House of Dynamite. It's so weird. I've read all these things about this movie.
And the name never.
And
maybe
A House of Dynamite
by the way, maybe not a great name.
The plot follows the U.S. government officials' response to a single nuclear missile launched by an unidentified enemy. Anyway, that's a strange title. A nuclear movie that's got dynamite in it.
Anyway, so we're gonna play a little game around that. But first, there were just a couple of quick hits I wanted.
Well, I was going to lay out the rest of the episode, and then we're going to do we're going to do a letter that you think Bibi Netanyahu should write.
A speech he should give.
A speech he
should
give.
And I'm going to read it. Yeah.
And then we're going to do a little sort of preview of the Gotham Book Prize from next year. You just want to talk about how many great books there have been about New York City.
So many this year. Yeah, I just
thought
it was worth noting them.
But first, we're going to talk about 2 things. So I want to ask you, this is the light appetizer subject, but I want to ask you what Lyle said to you about Jimmy Kimmel. Lyle's your son, obviously.
Lyle's my son, and as I said before on this podcast, this is a kid who's grown up entirely in downtown Manhattan.
Okay.
Only ever gone to a very, very sort of progressive private school in downtown Manhattan. And it's not him, but I've noticed this with his friends, my friends who have teenage boys at these kinds of schools, my friends who have teenage boys at these kinds of schools in D.C. or L.A. or San Francisco, where these schools have managed to alienate every kind of white young male, at least white young male, maybe it's more, by effectively telling them you're evil because of this, because you have this faculty that is so rapidly left-wing that all these kids now want to go to South for college. They are, hate the Democratic Party. They hate the left. Like if you said, how do we alienate a generation of boys to make them as against us as possible? That's what these schools are doing. And what was interesting was, so I asked him about Jimmy Kimmel, and he said he should not.
Did he really have an idea of who Jimmy Kimmel is?
He knew about it.
He does.
I don't know that he knew before, but he was aware of the controversy.
Sure.
And he said Kimmel should not have been taken off the air, that censorship. But, and this was the interesting thing, was he said, but all the people complaining about it are hypocrites. because for all of these years, all they did was tell everyone what they can and can't say and kick you off of platforms and everything else. And they did the exact same thing to anyone they didn't like that ABC did to Kimmel now. And while this is wrong, we're not here by accident. We're here for a reason.
So I guess that's true, but there's also no one got kicked off the air quite like that, right? So I guess maybe Tucker Carlson, there was a revolt against him where they went after his advertisers.
But people got canceled all the time for saying using the wrong pronouns or whatever it was.
Do you think people got canceled for the wrong pronouns?
I think that the internet became, when the kind of left was at its ascendancy in terms of kind of cultural dominance, it became very, very vicious, where if you just even deviated from the orthodoxy in any way, shape, or form. And the point is,
but you deviated from the orthodoxy all the time.
Yeah, and I got I had a vicious front page New York Times hit piece about me for that reason, right? Because I was insufficiently woke, according to them. So, I think I did pay a price for it.
Right.
So, but the point was, it's just interesting that Lyle, although he, I agree and think I'm glad that I got to what, in my view, is the right place on Kimmel, is the people who are now complaining about it really ought to take some responsibility and say, this is not out of thin air, right?
Yeah.
To a certain extent, we're in the world we're in because the left was so desperate to assert their power and moral superiority over everyone they possibly could that, in many ways, they created this culture. And someone always said, well, the FCC is different than people on the internet. And I'm like, you think a 16-year-old boy knows the difference between the FCC and that?
Well, there is a difference, and I think Lyle understands that too. A government official saying,
but if you're just being told endlessly you're bad, I don't really know that because it came from Brendan Carr as opposed to someone on Twitter that it's really, in their mind, meaningfully different.
Works for the public interest, though, Brendan Carr. He works, so...
I'm not excusing what Brendan Carr did.
Right.
Although, also, and we'll get to this a little later, Disney has fucked this up royally, too, right? And this is just, to me, yet another example of awful comm strategy, which is surprising because Bob Iger is so good at this stuff. But, just own it. Right? So what was ABC's excuse for canceling Kimmel? We were afraid of the safety of our employees and sponsors, right? Nonsense.
Right.
Where if they just said, listen, we are a for-profit company, we're a publicly traded company, Disney, we have a fiduciary duty to our shareholders to maximize profits, we had affiliates refusing to run Kimmel, we have an FCC issue that we don't want to lose on. We waded into politics in Disney and Florida on the Don't Say Gay stuff and got our ass kicked on it. And quite frankly, we want to be apolitical because we just want to sell as much stuff as we can in every way we possibly can. And so, we're a business, and Kimmel became bad for business. Yeah. I really think that and the Bibi thing we're getting to a little later is sort of the same version of it, but if people just owned what they're doing, I really think that it would go a lot better than just digging the hole deeper and deeper.
Mm-hmm. So the Trump administration is canceling the annual report on food insecurity. That's obviously not something that makes you very happy.
No, it's what the fuck? They've already significantly cut SNAP benefits, which means a lot of people who need food are not going to get it. And then because they did that, rather than there being federal data to show that they increased hunger and food instability, they instead said, well, we'll just get rid of the report itself, right? And it's this has been a report that has existed for decades under both types of presidents, both administrations, left and right, because ultimately we want people to have food, right? That's a pretty fundamental premise of society. When you get to the Maslow kind of base level of needs, food is right there, number one, and the notion to me that this fucking guy, Donald Trump, just to be clear, tells Fox News he wants to get into heaven or that he should get the Nobel Peace Prize. You know what, Donald? We're going to nominate you alongside with Bibi, Putin, and a bunch of Somali warlords. Congratulations. What human being does this? As bad as they are, and in some ways as much as the left brought a lot of this on itself, there are times where he does things that to me are so wildly inhumane that I just kind of can't believe it.
So obviously the obvious analysis of this is that Trump is destroying anything that might present bad news about the performance of the government or the economy or any of his policies or anything like that. But I agree with you that I don't understand. This seems to be like a textbook thing of something the government should do. But
also I don't think it's going to work in the sense that very few people are focused on the policies areas around food insecurity. So maybe that does. But the economy, right? So he can say where the fuck he wants. But ultimately, inflation's going up. Job growth has plummeted. People are losing their jobs to AI. The Fed can't really cut interest rates because inflation keeps going up.
Well, they're going to be cutting them.
I don't, only cut them a quarter of a point. And I think, look, once Trump gets rid of Powell eventually, or Powell, has to retire.
His term, it goes through next spring. That's all,
right?
Right.
So then I think yes, but that will then wipe us into stagflation that will probably lead to Vance not winning the election in 28. You can't. Biden tried really hard to lie about inflation and hide it and say, no, it's not that bad.
Right.
And the Democrats got thrown out over that, among other reasons.
Right.
So, on something like this, I guess they could get away with it. But, if the goal is getting to heaven, I don't believe in an afterlife. But if I did, I like to think that God is smart enough to sort of be aware of the food insecurity report.
Let's play our game.
Yeah.
It's kind of a major stakes game. So the movie, I did a pretty bad job of explaining this. The Kathryn Bigelow movie, the premise is that there is a nuclear attack, incoming nuclear attack on the United States, unknown source of the attack. The president of the United States needs to decide what to do. And the three main options, A, B, and C. A, empty the arsenal, full strike against the presumed.
But to be clear, they don't know, at least as I understand the movie, they don't know where it came from.
Right.
So they
just have to guess.
Or just everyone, China, Russia, India, just, the whole slate.
Okay, including India.
I mean, in the movie, as I haven't seen it yet, but my understanding is, the option A would be if we're going down, which we are, right? There's no stopping that part. We're taking the world down with us. That's option.
And their premise is that this one nuclear strike is destroys the whole country.
That's my understanding.
Okay.
But again, I haven't seen the movie.
Okay.
But let's just for purposes.
Yeah, purposing. So A is strike back against everyone all at once, empty the arsenal. B, middle ground, a calibrated strike against some or most of the enemy, somebody. And C, just eat it. Refrain entirely.
But refrain entirely, let me just expand on that a little bit, which means I would argue that the most humane, decent thing you could do in the situation, if you're listen, my country is over, right? All 300 million people are basically 330 going to die from this thing. So I have a choice. I can take actions that will lead to another 8 billion people dying, or I can save their lives. And I could save 8 billion people. Even the question is, which of the last 10 presidents would make that choice?
Mm-hmm. Okay, right. So the number 10, the first president we're going to talk about is Richard Nixon. Your three options, A, B, or C.
So it's interesting. You would think from a temperament standpoint, empty the arsenal.
Yes.
And he was very much a zero-sum type person, so that probably would be his choice.
Very impulsive guy.
Yes, but very, very, very smart on foreign policy.
Okay.
So maybe there's some level of nuance that gets him to sort of the B middle ground option.
So you're going to give him like an A minus, a B plus kind of thing?
But if I have to pick one, I'd pick empty the arsenal. What do you pick?
I agree. Empty the arsenal. I mean, it's really hard to get through the fog of Nixon is just like a bad word in the country still.
Yeah.
So it's hard to know, the assumptions are so strong against him that I'm tempted to try to make an argument.
And he surrounded himself with, some smart people, but so many shitty people.
Right.
That.
Well, that's a big factor too.
Right. To the extent that he would have been taking advice, it wouldn't have been good advice.
Okay. So Gerald Ford, Mr. Nixon corrective, trying to be the good guy who keeps government going.
So he seems like a classic middle ground guy, right?
Classic middle ground guy.
However, was there enough humanity in him and enough courage in him to choose not to strike back at all?
Yeah, Gerald Ford is a kind of opaque figure in American history. So, but I get the feeling, Michigan football guy, he must have had some kind of strong will, right?
You would think.
It
still really seems, if anyone here listening is a Ford scholar, let us know. But it just feels like he's the middle of the road guy.
So he's going to be a B. He's going to be a calibrated strike middle ground guy. Jimmy Carter, this is an obvious one. This is the sort of the inverse of the Nixon one, where like the assumptions are like, you know, he
didn't even bomb Iran when they took our people hostage.
Right. Well, they had our people.
I think a lot of other leaders would have said "fuck that" and just started bombing.
Right. Although what's interesting is what was the name of the horrific the soldier who was responsible for the My Lai massacre? You know, when he was convicted, Jimmy Carter was the governor of Georgia. They did this like whole protest of like everybody drove around. I think one day with their headlights on to protest it. Like he was against the prosecution of him
because he felt like this guy was acting on the orders of the U.S. government.
Yeah, and that I mean, I think in Georgia people were like, what are soldiers supposed to do? They're supposed to kill people, and that was the you know.
Oh, so you would argue that might move Carter more towards B, right?
Well, it just suggests that he has some other gears in there. I think ultimately of all the last 10 presidents, Jimmy Carter was the most likely to do the hard humanitarian thing.
Yes, I'm gonna stick with C.
I agree. I'm gonna stick with C. Ronald Reagan.
Is there an argument other than A? Do you have one?
Well, he talked tough, right? But the question was there an underlying humanity to Ronald Reagan that we're short?
Not that I look again. I think he was a good president.
Right.
I really do. I understand that he had positions that I really disagree with. Right. But overall, I think he was an effective president, and I think his tough stance is part of what led to the end of communism.
Right.
But I don't have any recollection of some great strain of humanity in Reagan to make me think that he would choose to spare everyone.
Right. Well, definitely not C. I guess it's just an A or B choice, but you're going to go with A after the Arsenal.
A. You?
I have A down here, so I'm gonna stick with that too. George H.W. Bush.
So this is the most interesting one on the whole list, right? Because he's a Republican.
1,000 points of light.
You know, he was in the military. He ran the CIA. I mean, this is a guy that he definitely understood war, right? At the same time, he struck me as a really principled man who tried to do what he thought was right. Not always, right? I mean, some people will say that what, he did in the 88 campaign with Lee Atwater was really immoral, but, I assume he would argue like elections are binary contests and you win or you lose. But I like to think that if there was someone who would act purely on the basis of humanity, not because it matches their political ideology like it did with Carter, but simply because they're like, what is the point of killing another 8 billion people if we're dead anyway? Mm-hmm. It would be this guy. So I'm going to give him C.
You're going to give him C?
Yep.
Wow. Okay. I have him as B. I think that's a kind of like obvious choice for me, and I like your C choice. But I agree with absolutely everything you said. But I think fundamentally,
it's hard.
Also, the people around him. I mean, he was around. Relatively hard right, sort of cold warrior types.
Dan Quayle.
Well, I don't think he probably talked to Dan Quayle.
Yeah. But Powell was there, and Powell clearly had very good judgment.
Well, sort of.
I think so. Powell,
Except for the old yellow cake problem.
Clinton. So I don't think C is an option with Clinton at all. Do you?
No.
So it's A or B, and my gut is B, but I could be persuaded that Clinton goes A. Just because I feel like...
He wanted to be tough?
Here's the thing. So part of this specific equation is there are no political consequences because your country doesn't survive, right?
Right.
So you can't be like punished in the next election for it. But I still feel like the inherent selfishness of Bill Clinton makes it's hard to be that selfish and then choose to do the right thing on behalf of humanity simultaneously.
Yeah, I think
I'll
that's
probably
well
go with B.
Okay,
but
you're torn.
I could be persuaded of A.
Okay,
what do you pick?
I put B, but again, I think that's a little bit of a sort of cop out choice. So I like the more, out there reasons. I mean, I think he had obviously a super impulsive kind of streak to him, and selfishness that probably the most selfish of all these 10 presidents, with the possible exception of Trump.
Yeah.
But Trump is sort of otherworldly in that way. Like there's something
different category.
Yeah, different category.
All right, W.
Go ahead, W.
I mean, so there are strains of humanity in George W. Bush, right? So what he did with AIDS in Africa was pretty great.
Yeah.
Like, I really do admire that. With that said, the problem is I don't think he has strong will or character, unlike his dad. And I think he was pushed around by Dick Cheney for 8 years.
Yeah.
I think Cheney and Rumsfeld and that group would have been unequivocally empty the arsenal. And I just think that Bush, at the end of the day, would have just succumbed to them.
Now, if we were making the movie version of this, which they obviously are doing, but not based on W, I see him standing up to those guys precisely in the key moment, like because he had been pushed around and because he...
Sounds like a good movie.
It does sound like a good... And there's something about, I mean, whatever, people do like him, you know.
I don't, well, especially now, you're like oh,
paints.
he was, right.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, in fairness to Trump, right, and Trump is literally the worst, but in fairness to Trump, W launched a war that killed 1 million people, mainly Iraqis, but some Americans too, and other people, and spent, I don't know, something like $2.3 trillion in just wasted fucking money, right? Trump probably hasn't actually done anything yet that bad.
You mean on a scale of that, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
no, definitely not.
Right. He's done.
I mean, that's the worst thing that's happened in our lifetime.
Right. Trump does terrible things like 100 times a day, so it feels overwhelming.
Right. But most of their press releases.
But the specific impact of what Bush did. So I'm going to go with A.
Barack.
So, it's funny. I'm going to go with C for the exact same reason as Bush. So Obama was extremely independent-minded, extremely arrogant, right? Really, truly believed he was smarter than everyone else on absolutely anything possible. And I think oftentimes as a president, that hurt him, right? Because he did a really poor job interacting with Congress.
Yep.
And, he got one massive thing done, the Affordable Care Act, which was incredible in the sense that, like, it was just transformational and necessary. Some of it worked, some of it hasn't, but a lot of it has. But not much after that, right? Yep. And I think in part that's because his personality was so alienating that it didn't work. But for the same reason, I think he would, he's such a smart guy, and in some ways he's such a lawyer, that this is one of those cases where lawyers are actually pretty useful because they'd get the information, he would process it faster than anyone else, he would quickly in his mind be able to see all the pros and cons, and then if he concluded C, even if he had his advisors pressuring him to do A or B, I think he just would have stuck with C.
So I agree with all that. The one caveat I'll say is that Obama was big into those like drone assassinations, and they did a lot of those. That struck me as a way to do kind of powerful things without like feeling the direct cost of them. And so there is a kind of streak in him.
But yes, I agree with that. And I thought about that. But look, even B, in the way that, this is a game that we made up, but in the way I perceive it, still kills hundreds of millions of people. Right. So, like, it's not that there's, 7 unintended casualties who were in bin Laden's home who were servants when the drone hit, right? So I still think he would have chosen not to do it.
Okay. So Donald Trump, I don't think we need to even talk about
fine,
this. In fact, if he were the president in the movie, they just would have to not make the movie. It would just be like...
There'd be no point to it.
Nobody would even think about it.
Right.
Just be like, well, of course, we're going down a ball of flames. Right. Joe Biden.
I think B, he's a very sort of
question is, who would be making the decision?
Depends when in his presidency, right?
Maybe not even, right? Like, how do we know?
Lloyd Austin, who was the defense secretary, struck me as like, he kind of was... the only thing he got public on was some mini scandal that I don't remember what it was anymore. He did something wrong.
No, he had surgery or something.
Didn't tell anyone. Yeah, it didn't seem like that big a deal to me.
Right.
But either way, I think Biden would have gone B. Now, again, like Nixon, Biden's really smart on foreign policy. And I know that this is an unorthodox view, but I actually really admire what he did in Afghanistan. I understand that the withdrawal was messy, but it was always going to be messy. And neither Obama nor Trump had the balls to evacuate, and he did. And I give him a lot of credit there. But overall, I'm not... He's also, as we saw, a historically selfish person, right? He basically chose to elect Donald Trump again based on his own selfishness.
Yeah.
So anyone that selfish, I don't think is capable of that level of humanity. So I'm going to go with B.
Well argued.
What was yours?
I had B too. So
Yeah.
I agree. Okay, so you have a
Switching
speech
gears. Yes.
that you've written for Bibi Netanyahu,
Yeah,
a speech that he's not likely to give.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think it's unlikely. But
Okay, so why are you doing it?
Just because it kind of hit me, and when I sometimes have ideas, I write them down,
Okay.
as you will know, because I
Yes.
tend to send them to you. But look, here's the point. I'm going to read this speech.
Okay.
If Netanyahu gave the speech, I still wouldn't agree with Israel's choices or actions around Gaza at this point. But I think this would at least be A, intellectually honest, and B, to the point we were discussing earlier, by owning it, the excuses they make now are so absurd and so nonsensical that nobody has any confidence in them whatsoever.
Right.
And the speech I'm about to give at least is very, very clear and plain and says, here's what we're doing, here's why, and I don't care if you don't like it, but I think in many ways that would be better. So here's what he would say. I want to admit that I made a mistake. No, not the one you're hoping I'll say. I don't regret a single thing we've done in Gaza. What I regret was not being open and clear from day one about my intention. The Jewish people have been persecuted for 5,700 years. We have been slaughtered, preyed upon, villainized. The Holocaust was still less than 100 years ago. Israel was created to give the Jewish people a place to live safely. Israel does not work if its people are not safe. So when October 7th occurred, it violated the underlying premise of our nation's very existence. My goal in this war is very simple. I want it to be abundantly clear to the world that we are not to be messed with. Yes, of course what we are doing in Gaza is harsh and overwhelming. Yes, of course the loss of life and human tragedy is great. That's the point. Yes, of course the international community is upset. That is even leading to more overt anti-Semitism around the world. People keep telling me that. But guess what it's also leading to? The very clear understanding by every nation in the world that we are not to be messed with. If you attack us, our response will be overwhelming and relentless. It will go far beyond what you think the ramifications would logically be, because they will be illogical and uncorrelated with whatever you did to us. We will use every tool available to ensure our safety, whether it's taking out half of Hezbollah by turning their pagers into bombs or preemptively destroying Iranian nuclear weapons. You don't like it? You don't like us? So what? The world has never liked us. We have been chased out of every country we've ever lived in. Not this one, not this time. I hope that's what's happening in Gaza, and what will continue to happen in Gaza makes the risk of attacking us very clear to everyone. And to be even more clear, we have nuclear weapons. Based on what you've seen over the past 2.5 years, do you really want to take the risk that we'd use them? I wouldn't if I were you. My job is not to be popular globally. Honestly, by doing my job properly, it means I'm often not even popular in Israel. That doesn't matter. One thing does, the long-term safety of Israel. And if my fellow Jews around the rest of the world are experiencing anti-Semitism, come live here. We will protect you. But that can only occur when the rest of the world fully understands the consequences for threatening us. I hope it is now clear. Bibi.
So this goes in the school of you were talking about earlier with ABC and Disney, like own it. What are you actually doing? And
I think that Israel's military strategy, let's say it's brilliant. I'm not sure if it, look, the Iranian stuff's been brilliant. The Hezbollah stuff's certainly been brilliant. At Gaza's just been sort of, I don't know if it's strategy or just endless destruction, but nonetheless, they're good at this stuff, right? Their comm strategy is abysmal to the extent that there even is a comm strategy, right? It's abysmal both because of its intellectual dishonesty and lack of rationality, but also because it obscures every good thing that Israel does, right? Like this should be an and thing. You know, we are doing this thing you don't like militarily for these specific reasons, and we are one of the most innovative, philanthropic, generous countries in the world. Because Israel really is, right? Israel gives, global aid in disasters to 140 countries, and even some of those don't recognize Israel as a state, right? Israel has developed new technology in healthcare and agriculture and transportation that have saved or improved tens of millions of lives. Like, given its size, Israel's actual global contribution dwarfs that of any country. But now no one knows that or cares about that or even is willing to listen to it because of the war. And while giving that speech would not make anyone say, oh, now I understand what you're in Gaza and I'm for it, at least it would make sense, right? And
well, it makes sense, but you're right. Like, it wouldn't have any effect. It wouldn't change anybody's, mind, would it?
No, but I think at that point, rather than contorting themselves into these endless Gordian knots of trying to rationalize what they're doing by saying, oh, well, we have to get rid of the rest of Hamas, or, oh, we're trying to save the hostages, even though the parents and the families of the hostages hate what they're doing right now. They're just like, yeah, guess what? We were attacked, and it's going to happen again unless everyone is terrified of us. And that means that every time rationally you think it's been enough, stop, we keep going. I don't agree with that.
This is what Bibi actually thinks.
I think it's what he thinks. I think it's a combination of this and then also just he is a politician. He's an elected official. He has a majority of seats in Knesset in part thanks to the far-right parties, and therefore he represents them, and their interests and their views are very different than the average mainstream Israeli or certainly anyone else around the world. And so, I think he's doing what's necessary to keep himself in power. Unquestionably, he's doing that. But I also think that he has this broader, almost biblical-like vision of this is why he's doing what he's doing. And it doesn't matter if the world doesn't like it because, in the grand scheme of history, he will be proven right.
So why doesn't he do this? Why doesn't he make this speech?
I think it's either a few things. One, the lack of just giving a shit at all, which is stupid because he's really costing himself a lot. Two would be, a lot of people are two sides of the same coin, right? And they could be just as good at some things as bad at others. And I think his instinct is to lie and cheat and be dishonest. He's not a good guy, right? And I think now also they've spent close to 3 years now making, for not even 3 years, because the first year and a half, 2 years, like I was on board, right? But at this point now, when it was so clear that they had made their point, it was so clear they had avenged October 7th, it was so clear that they had sort of basically destroyed all of Gaza, and they just keep going and going and going. At that point, they've given all these rationales that are nonsensical, but I think they probably feel stuck in those positions.
Right. All right. We have one more.
Yeah, one more topic.
Yeah, one more topic. You want to talk about New York City books and what a bumper crop we have this year.
It's just I just wanted to write this and say this, and this will be in Substack tomorrow too, which is just, it's been a hell of a year for books about New York City or set in New York City. And the truth is, a lot of these might have won in other years. Right. Obviously, only one or at most two will win this year.
You're talking about the Gotham Book Prize.
Yeah, the Gotham Book Prize. But wanted to just sort of shout out these books, and they're worth taking a look at. So fiction, Playworld by your good friend Adam Ross. It is a great, engrossing coming-of-age story in the 1980s. I think it captures New York City in the 80s really well. I See You've Called In Dead by John Kinney. This is a book that has gotten, I think, very little attention. Our friend Zibby published it, and so that's kind of how I learned of it.
Right.
It is really funny. It's about an obituary writer, and his life and career and everything is sort of just falling apart at the seams. Mm-hmm. And did you read it?
Nope. I want to read it now that you're
really
describing it.
It takes place in Brooklyn and Manhattan completely. Right. It's just a great book. So Mona Acts Out by Misha Berlinski. Really good book. It's about a successful veteran theater actress from the Upper West Side who just kind of reaches her breaking point on Thanksgiving and freaks out. And it's about kind of her actions over the course of the day, and it's an engrossing book. Garbage Town by Ravi Gupta. Ravi is our friend. Yeah. We were supposed to have him on the podcast the other day, and we had some logistical problems, but he's been on before. He wrote a great coming-of-age story, and takes place on Staten Island. There are not that many great Staten Island novels.
Yeah.
And this is really one of them. I remember when Ravi asked me to blurb the book, thinking like, oh, shit. I said yes, but then I'm like, this will probably not be very good.
You should probably have a category of Gotham Book Prize just for Staten Island. Just to just because
honorable mention, Staten Island?
No, it's not no honorable mention, just the Staten Island sort of door prize or something like that.
I guess.
Come on, for Ravi.
He sent me the PDF, and then I fucking ripped through it. Loved it. So I thought Ravi did a great job. Highly recommend it. Nonfiction, we just 40 minutes ago or so had Jonathan Mahler on this podcast about the Gods of New York.
That'll be up next week. So.
We've talked about this book a bunch, but it's literally New York City from 1986 to 1990, and it's Trump, it's Koch, it's Sharpton, it's Rudy, it's Larry Kramer, it's Spike Lee. It's just an incredible tale. Keith McNally's book, I Regret Almost Everything. It's his memoir. This is the creator and owner of Balthazar and Pastis and the Odeon and tons of legendary restaurants. One, restaurants are fun, right? So it's fun to read about them and fun to read about how he sort of built them and succeeded and where he failed and everything else. But two, this is one of the most brutally honest memoirs I've ever read. There were literally times I wanted to be like, hey, stop being so hard on yourself, right? And I'm hard on myself, right? I'm not exactly the arbiter of this one, but I thought it was great. One that was good, but not as good as McNally, but still good. When the Going Was Good, An Editor's Adventures During the Last Golden Age of Magazines by Graydon Carter. I assume you read this one?
I haven't read it.
It's an interesting book in that he's a really good writer.
Right.
No surprise there. He came from like a, poor family in Western Canada. So his rise was not exactly preordained, right? It's not Playworld where they all went to Trinity. This is a guy who really came out of nowhere. So the first half of the book, which was his rise, I loved. It was so interesting. Second half of the book was just like, these are all the celebrities I hung out with when I ran Vanity Fair, and the stories at the Met Gala, and that was boring to me. Night People How to Be a DJs in 1990s New York City by Mark Ronson. I just finished this. I loved it.
You did?
I thought it was a great book.
Totally. I'm halfway through.
So are you enjoying it so far?
Yeah.
So it's, tell me if you're good. So one, unquestionably a New York City book through and through.
Yep.
Two, and this is sort of somewhat specific to me, but like I very much lived in the neighborhoods he's talking about at that time. And I wasn't like a huge club person, but I'd been to a lot of the places in the book. I'd been to some of the different parties in the book, some of the different clubs in the book. I had some awareness of him back then. And so I just thought he captured it really well. Also, he's just, there's no, I looked to see if there was like another writer on there. And if there is, they didn't credit them at all because assuming he wrote it, he's really good and he's funny.
Yeah, it's really funny.
Surprising. And then finally, How to Lose Your Mother, A Daughter's Memoir by Molly Jong Fast, who's another friend of the podcast. A little less New York specific than, say, restaurants or magazines or clubs because it's just her and her relationship with her mom, Erica Jong. But it does take place mainly in New York City, and Molly's a terrific writer. And in counting her family's history, you do get a lot of good New York in there, too.
It's good.
So that's it. One quick recommendation.
Okay.
Although I guess that was 9
Yeah, that was a bunch of recommendations.
I watched the TV show Black Rabbit on Netflix over the weekend. Jude Law and Jason Bateman.
Yeah.
I really liked it.
I read some of the articles about it.
Thought it was, right, you just read literary criticism. I thought it was.
No, I think I might watch it. I only watched the first episodes of TV shows, as you know.
It's stressful. But it is
the restaurant intrigue is stressful.
But no, because it really gets crazy. But they're both really good actors, and the rest of the cast is really good too. And it's a fun story. And again, it is a total New York story. So if you like it, I thought it was
Wait,
good.
do you watch the whole thing?
I did. I watched Laura. I watched the first episode Saturday night, and then yesterday, I literally
No football.
I watched a little bit of football.
Okay.
The Mets were awful, and I tried, and I kept turning it off.
How are you feeling about the Mets? Are you okay?
I mean, we're now no longer even ahead in the wild card.
Yeah.
So
it's weird. Terrible
it's not
collapse.
good. Yeah, not good. I binged the other 7 episodes yesterday.
And was that okay with Laurel? You just went ahead and
No, I wasn't. She was in New Jersey visiting her daughter.
But I mean,
at school.
since you started together, you
I told she didn't really because
I feel like that could be a violation of sorts.
We have discussions about shows we're gonna watch independently or together.
Okay.
And she found the first episode very stressful, so I'm not even sure that she'll choose to watch the rest of them. And I really liked it, so it was okay.
Good.
All right.
Thanks, Bradley.
Thanks, Hugo. Firewall is recorded at my bookstore, P&T Knitwear, located at 180 Orchard Street on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. We'd love to hear from you with questions, feedbacks, or idea for a guest. Just email me at bradley@firewall.media or find me on LinkedIn. And to keep up with what's on my mind and my latest writing, please follow my new Substack at bradleytuss.substack.com. Thanks again for listening.